Hey guys, thanks for tuning into Red Dirt Rods. Today we are continuing work on our MGB GT project. Finally got it up on the lift. We've started cutting out the rusted rocker panels and inners, and it's terrible, and we've got a whole bunch of that for you guys coming later. But first, we pulled the front fenders off and we thought they were in good shape, but it turns out they're not. Both sides have been patched and very poorly, and we're gonna take those completely down. We're gonna put on a couple of patches that we picked up from Moss Motors, and we're gonna show you how to do it for your project. Okay, so we've got our fender over here in our work area on a stand, and we're gonna take all the trim off of it, but I wanna show you a quick trick. So this is a Pro Gauge 2. This is a paint thickness gauge. These are really a good idea to have anytime you buy a car. I didn't have mine with me when I bought this, and I knew that it had rust, so I wasn't super worried about it. But what this does is it tells you how thick the paint is. So we put it right here. I'm gonna catch it right before it drops, and this one is clicking off right about 9 mils. 2 paint jobs, it's gonna be about 8 to 10 mils. That's kind of just a rough guide. So at first glance, we're okay. It's a little thick. I'm gonna check it around here. It's a little bit thicker over here. A lot thicker. Oh, whoop, what we got over here? We got nothing. I mean, it's not sticking at all. You can feel it. You can feel a little bit of wave, and you can feel a lot of little lumps. But if we flip it over, we couldn't tell this until we got it out, because in the car there is a panel right here that keeps you from being able to see everything. But look at this. This is a terrible, terrible hack job repair. I don't know what the quality of welds are, but I do know that they didn't bother to cut out the rust. So there's tons of rust in this. It looks terrible. We have to fix it. I have patch panels from Moss, so let's get this done. I'm gonna turn this over to Brock, and he's gonna break this whole thing down, get the headlights and all the mirrors and stuff off of this, and then we're gonna get started. But one thing before that, because he's never done this before, we got to remove this trim. The clips on our trim are like button snaps on your clothes, and the easiest way to get these off is to pry one end and lightly tap on it so that this whole thing slides off. That's how these work. So we're just going to lift this edge up, tap it with a wood hammer. Once you get one off, should be able to just push it. There we go. See if we can just pop it this way. Wiggle. There we go. Oh, there we go. Oh, terrible. That may not be the right way, but that's the way I'm doing it. All that trim does is catch dirt, cause rust. So we're going to delete this. We'll smooth this body line out where that trim was. So now I'm going to turn this over to Brock, and he's going to take the rest of this junk off.
All right, so for this headlight, you need to use a pry tool to just kind of get it in that groove, and it will pop off the chrome trim surrounding the headlight. Trying not to destroy it to keep it nice. Unlike this trim, we are saving this, so there we go. So this is off. There's literally nothing. It's just a little piece you pop off. So now it exposed the other screws that I need to take out now. So there's a flathead and a Phillips, I guess, for this. All right, got my flathead screwdriver. Thanks for helping, Culver. So should be That's missing, but I think there's only a couple. This is just removing the headlight itself, and then there's some more bolts to take out. There's a, look at this. This is so goofy. Look at this. All right, so basically there's a spring inside the headlamp to make you not be able to like lose it somehow, and I have to somehow like get that out. So there's a spring, and I can't get my hand to it, so I have to use this pry tool. There we go. Here's a spring that was stopping us from removing the headlight without. It's out. So I guess that's what the spring was for. So that just completely just plugs and plugs out. So now we can take this whole light bulb fascia out without having to unplug anything, because that's pretty like caked in there and plugged up. So I think we're keeping these, so we just gotta sand them and repaint them. Alright, my hair looks good. Now let's go to the next part. Sit. Stay. Good dog. Alright, so for the inside, we should this bottom one. There we go. And then this whole turn signal is out. Now, time to move to the back to remove the mirror and windshield washer, windshield wiper washer or something. So I think this is the wiper fluid. Yeah, okay, so this is the wiper fluid. No, it's not. I actually don't know what this is at all. So there's that little ball joint. I'm really curious on what this is. I have no clue at all what this could be. I don't know much about this car anyway. Alright, so that is off. There's a little ring and a metal disc on the back side, and then this wire just pops out. This could be the antenna. Okay, so I think this is the antenna. That makes more sense now. Yeah, so this is the antenna for the radio. That's out. Now we just gotta remove the mirror, and then we're on to the next side. Alright, so now we are removing the mirror. It's just a Phillips on this side and then a flathead on the other. Alright, so, ow.
Did you cut yourself?
Yeah. That's probably not good. This is off now. And I gotta wash my hand. It's done now. This is our patch, or front fender patch kit from Moss Motors. We are just gonna kind of like mock it up on here. It should fit pretty perfect, but since there is been bodywork done on this rear section, it might not look the best, but we will make it look perfect when we fix it. So right now it looks good. It's just because the Bondo, it just doesn't gap completely right. Alright, so we're gonna sand this down and see what the real damage is with all the rust and filler. So we'll get the grinding tools and get at it. I'm just cleaning off the Bondo. I'm doing a strip from here to here just to see how deep it is, and it's probably where I'm going to cut to replace it. So yeah. So it's really thick. You can see how I did one pass and it's super thick on the middle section where they patched it. There's probably around 1/4 of an inch of filler on this, and it's not good. It's not good. Frowny face.
Let's see how far up this goes. As you can see here, this is really thick with filler. So what we're trying to do is find where the filler begins so that we can section in from there. I could cut this apart and section in this entire piece. I don't want to do that if I don't have to, but it may be the best way to do this. We'll just see. It looks like it's from here down. At that point, we're almost just to go ahead and section this off. In order to do that, because these fenders are made really weird, so this is a piece and this is a piece, and then this is part of the top, and you have to weld it here and here. You can see that right here. That's where that weld is. Go ahead and lightly buzz this down. Actually, I'll give you, let's get a Scotch-Brite pad, get a brown Scotch-Brite pad.
All right.
And buzz this down, buzz both edges, and let's see how exactly this is seamed together. So then we'll have to separate this, which might be able to do that part easily with a seam ripper. We're just gonna have to look and find out. So I see how this is done. Okay, so if you look here, yeah, it makes total sense. So it's welded at the bottom, okay, but this is a fold over seam. So we'll have to come along here and pry this up, and that will allow us to remove the outer section away from the whole fender and this inner piece. Then we're gonna have to separate this, which I think we can separate with a seam ripper. Then we should be able to just pull this section off. We'll cut these welds, weld it up, and be done with it. And I'm just gonna start on the edge. That's working pretty good. Now this edge right here is welded. I'm gonna go ahead and split that off. This is my seam ripper mounted to my air hammer. See if this will do it quickly. These are duckbill pliers. I'm gonna see if I can get these in here and try to open this up a little bit. I don't know if they will. They will a little bit. I'm just gonna use regular pliers. This technique is also used on door skins. That's where you see it the most. Doors and sometimes hood skins, where they will fold the edge over. You can keep the inner structure and just replace the outer. Okay. So there we go. So now if you come in here, you can see the edge. I don't really like this on a Fender because you're gonna catch a lot of debris there. You can see a lot of rust. When we put this back together, I'm going to treat it with some rust preventative so that this shouldn't happen again. All right, so we definitely have a couple of extra spot welds on here, and now that I can see them, I know where I need to use the spot weld cutter. We're just gonna go ahead and spot weld cut these. So this is a specific spot weld cutter. It's got a little pin here that compresses, and that helps center it. There we go. Okay. And we've got another one right here. So spot welds can be hard to find. That right there, this little dimple, that's a spot weld. That's a spot weld. I think there may be one here. If you use a Scotch-Brite or a roll-lock pad like this, you can stuff over like that. Okay, and see how that makes it show up? That makes the dimple show up better. That's the easiest way to find them. It's not always super obvious. Okay, there we are. That worked a lot easier. So now our panel, our outer panel is free, or I should say our
Inner.
Well, the outer is free from the inner. Now we need to figure out how we're going to split this section off from the top part of the wing. We're going to give the seam ripper a try. See if I can just pop this off. Okay. I can see all the spot welds now.
There's a lot.
There's a ton of spot welds all along this, little resistance welds. You can see all the depressions here. So there's one about every inch to half inch. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put this in here, and I'm just gonna rip all across here. This line, we can square that up later. It's gonna get warped. It's gonna warp anyways. We can clean that up with a hammer and dolly. We have to go from the other side. I can't get to any of this. I can't cut it other than cutting it from the other side. So you could come through here and just kind of cut this whole thing with a plasma cutter or a cut-off wheel. 6 1/2 dozen the other. You got to straighten out this line anyway, so it doesn't really matter. There it goes. Don't like what it's doing, but I'm gonna go ahead and use the my recip saw to cut this edge, and I'll just grind it back. Being careful only to cut through the top layer. Now, there we go. Still got a couple of, got one right there. Good God. There we have it. We've got the lower half of the wing removed. So much filler. So now we have to fix this. We did have a little bit of issue over here, which is in the worst possible place to screw it up. In my overzealousness to get this off, when I used the seam ripper on the outside, that was a mistake. I shouldn't have done that. So what I did is I caused this little buckle right here. So what I'm gonna have to do is I'm gonna probably use my stud gun, because I can't get behind it. I'm gonna put a couple studs here and pull that out so I can get this to fit up the way I want. Okay, so this is a Jefferson gun. Oh, I'm sorry, this is a stud gun.
Oh,
It uses these little studs. You pop them in like this, then you push this, you push it all the way down, and now you have a stud. So we're going to use this to pull that flange out just a little bit. I made this because this little thumb wheel does not work very well on this. So this way we can just pin it. Sometimes they work great first time, sometimes they don't. I'm going to use this small hammer with this wide head and see if I can get it to come up. I think we're just about got it. Maybe the tiniest adjustment, but for the way we're doing this, I think it'll work. I'd rather not have to separate this from the rest of it, just because I don't want to tear anything else up. I don't have a replacement for this or this, and I don't want to tear it. I don't want to destroy it. But it might be best to do it that way anyways. Okay, so we're real close. I need to take this edge off. It's just a skosh. I'd rather it be a hair. I'd rather it be a hair in, because I can fix that, rather than if it's, so if this is proud of the top of the wing here, this seam is proud a hair of the wing, that's a lot harder to fix if this is short. If this is just inside this edge, you can adjust that. So I'd rather have it a hair short or have to fill a tiny bit of gap, because I have to put a backing piece in here anyways, which makes filling it really easy. Oh, that's a lot better. It's not perfect. We're a lot closer. I think I can fix that. I definitely screwed that up. That's my fault for sure. All right, so this is Benjamin in his blasting outfit. So he's going to be going outside and doing a little crushed glass blasting on our MGB fender so we can remove rust, make sure it's prepped good. So in order to do this safely, he's wearing a respirator with dust shields. So these aren't actually charcoal canisters, these are just dust filters. These work really well for this, and then you can pop them off and put charcoal filters when you're painting or doing anything with like fiberglass. And then of course he's wearing some coveralls to keep the crushed glass from getting on him. We use crushed glass instead of sand because sand is terrible. It's actually really bad for you. It has a lot of free silica in it. When it breaks, it releases free silica in the air, and that settles in your lungs and it can make you very sick. It's basically kind of what happens when you breathe asbestos and get mesothelioma. That is from free silica. So this here will protect Ben, keep him safe, but we don't have to worry about free silica because we're using recycled crushed glass. So we've prepped our fender and sandblasted this half and all the edges. We are going to go back and sandblast the rest of it later, but that's not necessary for right now. We're just trying to get this welded together. So before we do that, because of this seam specifically, this seam here, along here and all down through here, you run the risk of inviting rust when you weld. Anytime you weld, it heats up the metal, which makes it soak up moisture, and that creates a surface that rust just loves to start from. So in order to avoid that, we're going to use this. Now this is a cold galvanizing spray, also referred to as weld through coating. So this is a high zinc spray paint that when heated up to welding temperature, it gases off and then sucks back down to the panel. So after the weld is made, this will suck back on and cover all of that fresh weld so that you don't get rust forming behind your panel. This is really good. You should use this on pretty much any welded edge, especially if you can't get to the back side of it. And we won't be able to get between here once we weld it. I'm also going to weld this a little bit differently. So the original is spot welded here, as we showed you when we took it apart. I don't like that because it leaves this big gap up front, and you can see our gap on the front side, which I really don't care for. We're going to take care of that as well. So what we're going to do is I'm going to clamp this together, get it lined up and adjusted. I'll put some clamps here. I'll throw a couple of little spot welds across this, and then I'm actually going to stitch this across the front of this so that when we clean up our weld, we end up with a nice, smooth, clean surface that we don't have to add a bunch of body filler to. And that should really clean up the whole thing and make it a lot better. And then once we have this welded, we're going to come back over here and we're going to use the hammer and dolly technique to fold that lip over the edge. But first, we got to spray. A little bit of this goes a long way. Now we're going to let that dry for about 30 minutes, and I'm also going to go ahead and spray the rest of this section that's going to be covered. This section won't be, but the other side will be, so I'm going to spray it with the black. This has an E-coat on it. I'm going to go ahead and grind that E-coat off and hit it with some of the weld through as well. So now we're going to let this sit and dry for about 30 minutes. Come back, weld her up. The primer is dried, and now we're going to start clamping. I'm just using some small sheet metal clamps, and I'm going to pull this up tight. Let's just put a clamp in right here. So we've got 3 clamps on here. I think we're in pretty good shape. I'm not going to fold this over. I'm not going to fold this lip over until I have this section stitched. That way I can, if anything moves around, I can adjust it. Now I've got a few tacks in here. I've got my welder adjusted where I want it. I'm going to start adding a stitch. Now when you stitch weld, it's basically doing a series of small spot welds. You weld half an inch or so, maybe an inch, depending on how thick the metal is, at a time, and then you move 3-4 inches, 6 inches. You do another about ½ inch to an inch long weld, several inches, and then you come back to the first one and you step on. So you basically do a little bit here, a little bit here, a little bit here. You come back and you start where you left off until you have a complete stitch weld. Okay, so now Got that welded. I got to take care of this area. What I'm going to do is I'm going to throw a little bit of a spot weld where these original 4 were, and then I'm going to grind those down and start folding this lip over. I can take these clamps off, make sure everything's stuck down like I want it. I'm going to go ahead and clean up the welds I just made on the edge. Now, because I'm folding this over, I'm going to go ahead and hit this with some black Rust-Oleum paint just to go ahead and protect it. It's starting to rain, so you might hear some clickety-clackety. That's from the rain. But I'm going to go ahead and take this dolly and I'm going to put it up under here on this back side. I'm going to start folding this over. I'm putting this up here to support it so that this doesn't get wavy. That's crisp.
Is it?
Yeah, that's crisp. I like that. Looks really sharp. All right, so we got this folded. I think that came out really nice. I'm pretty happy with it. Go ahead and flip this bad boy over. We're nice and welded up. Yes, we've got some tall welds here. They're not perfect, but and I'm not really seeing much warp. I think that came out really nice. Now we just got to dress these down. We still need to weld up a couple of these little trim holes on this front side. We'll do that a little bit later. But honestly, just feeling here, there's a little bit.
Is there?
Yeah, it oil canned in a couple of spots, but that's always going to happen, or usually going to happen. So we can work those out in body work. We just got to grind these down, and then we can get to body work. But that's going to be the next time on Red Dirt Rods. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks for watching. Let's make magic.